Welcome to Your Life Reset, a Verta Health podcast series. I'm your host, Teresa Link, and in this series, we'll hear from people on their Verta journey, the wins, failures, moments of adversity, and moments of joy they're experiencing along the way. So sit back, relax, and listen as we unwrap the truly human experience of Verta. Welcome to today's episode where we explore what it truly takes to create lasting change. Today's guest, Doug Hilbert, a Verta Health coach who many of you fondly know, shares a transformative framework built on honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, or how to create change, reminding us that real change begins from within. So get ready for a conversation that cuts right to the heart of transformation. Let's dive in. Well, Doug, I'm so excited to have you on the show, and we have a lot of really exciting stuff to cover. Like I mentioned in the introduction, the how to change. So I think a lot of people are going to be very excited to hear about that. Before we dive in, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, you're a Verta Health coach. How long have you been here? What would be your area of expertise, and why should we, as the audience, really want to listen to your expertise today?
Thanks, Teresa. It's like,
Loaded question.
but I need to say this to members. I'm like, hey, don't trust me, right? This isn't something like, go try this stuff. Like, I came to Verta kind of like a jack of all trades, and I make this joke. I've dug in a lot of shallow wells, right? But I never, like, I don't have a PhD in anything. I'd say there's just a lot of life experience. So I've been coaching here over 7 years, and I think in January it'll be 9 years. Started working in the community development, like you guys were in the clinical trial and everything. And, everybody comes in, has a call, or mostly calls with the enrollment advisors. I remember, Sami's wife, the CEO's wife, and Meredith and I and Cami, we were the first ones like doing those, and then eventually companies get bigger, right? There's not a jack of all trades at Verta anymore, when you're in small startup world. And I knew that. And, I originally wanted to coach. That was a lot of my background. Coaching for this was really personal. I've been eating a low carb diet since October of 2013. And I did it with Dr. Finian Volek's books because, I was in the obese category. I had prediabetes. I had sleep apnea. I had a lot of the metabolic conditions, and I bought the books, and I had varied levels of success of doing it to myself on top of, coaching background and a business background, and really just like a people background, which paired really interesting with, I've been in 12-step recovery programs for 25 years, which literally is a program of behavior change. Worked with, hundreds of people, and I've done my 10,000 hours in AA and Al-Anon meetings. I've done my 10,000 hours of coaching and my 10,000 hours of eating low carb. And that was that famous book, right? The 10,000. I've checked these kind of things that really wouldn't appear to go together. But they kind of go together perfect for me to do this, and so it's kind of like, it's just like that weird thing in life where you like end up at the job that you're like at no point did I think I'd be doing this, but somehow I ended up, despite my own efforts to go do other things in finance and real estate and banking and make money, somehow I still ended up back in coaching and like effectively teaching, so it just like, I can't get away from the universe. It just keeps putting me in the spot where I can be of the most service. And, it's just kind of nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for a great conversation. I know you have a ton of expertise to offer us here, a lot in a bunch of unique, different settings. One of them being how you actually change, which is a big question. It's the $64,000 or $1 million question that everyone wants to know. How do I actually change? And you're going to tell us today. So can't wait. Um, so I want to start off with, just an honest question. Why is honesty the magical ingredient for change, as you have mentioned? Um, and how do you suggest that someone goes from kind of honest to brutally honest?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of different. Honest is a word. There's a bunch of different ways to kind of think about it. I mean, there's, truthful honesty, a sense of, there's a comment or a way that they phrase it. I do a lot of 12-step recovery work, cash register honesty, right? There's that level of honesty operating out in the world. And then when it comes to internal, I think really what we're looking for is it's a process of rigorous self honesty, right? Self introspection. And sometimes, that's not exactly always finding a specific truth, right? It could be, there was an event and I did X and, it was Y. Sometimes honesty ends up being a process of discovery, not only in, what our motivations might have been or why we did what we did, but also kind of, I think, in a more and let's say using it as a more positive sense is discovering what we really want and why we want it. So it's not just this, the brutal honesty part. It's not using the truth or what we're finding to judge ourselves, to criticize ourselves, certainly not to shame ourselves. Although, you have enough conversations with people, or I talk a lot about myself. I have a judge, a jury, and unfortunately at times the executioner in there, that, because we know all the mistakes we make, right? But I think you want to make it a positive process and it can be really helpful and to me I found it almost mandatory to do it with someone else that I do trust, right? To get this kind of 360 view of myself, right? Having these conversations just in my head with myself, don't always go the best, right? I can rationalize, I can justify things, I can, we always use the word excuses, but I had a lot of good reasons for why I did things that maybe just weren't really the best choice in the moment, and I can make a good case for those. Um, so I think but at the core, it's really getting to the root of reality, right? And that one of the key things to get to is a level of acceptance of what's actually going on right now. Because if we're not in reality, the solutions we're going to come up probably aren't going to be as effective as they could be. We don't have perfect information all the time, but it is, and it's an uncomfortable process, really, and it's doesn't sound fun all the time, but that's why I do like to kind of make it positive in a sense of it's a way to explore what we want and why we want it, not just, what we're doing wrong. So I don't know if that makes it any clearer or more confusing, but yeah.
We're gonna get more clear. We're gonna get even clearer as we go. I think you kind of set the stage really well in that in order for us to actually make a change, we have to be honest with ourselves. And like you said, not just kind of honest, but brutally honest. We have to really look into ourselves and accept everything, accept our darkness, accept our weaknesses as well as our strengths before we can actually move forward. Right. That's what I'm kind of hearing from you is we just got to really dig deep and not be afraid of that and also know that it can be kinda scary. So I like what you said about kind of doing this exercise if you'd like to with someone that you trust, to kinda just help you work through some of those words, rather than just doing it in your own head, which sometimes can be scary,
Mm.
I can imagine.
Uh, yeah, I have a lot of great ideas of why I did what I did, right? But it just
Sure.
having that, and who does really, really well, and help run some men's groups here. I mean, we use a lot of Brene Brown's, we do book studies on the gifts of imperfection, right? Having courage and vulnerability, but in the right places. I'm not running out in the street telling everyone everything I do wrong, right? There are correct places and people to be vulnerable with. Like I'm not coming to a work meeting at Verta and like, if I made a work mistake, right? Or if I need help with a work challenge, right? That's the appropriate environment for that. If I have an interpersonal challenge or a relationship challenge, that's not really a work meeting kind of thing. Yeah, I think what you can find is, partners or champions. And really what you want is somebody else who's actively engaged in the same process of self discovery, right? And you can do it in a partnership or you can do it in like a mentor mentee relationship. But you really, you want to be vulnerable and have courage and go through that process with somebody that's actively also doing it. They're putting in the work or maybe they've done the work before. And that they're trying to live up to these principles and exhibit these things, in their life as well. And eventually I've had mentor, mentee, I've been both sides. And eventually, you kind of get to a place in a lot of these where it's a peer-to-peer friendship type thing. And it's a two-way street. And, those are been some of the greatest, relationships and friendships in life. And, when it all hits the fan, you could pick up that phone and you go, at least one person that you can just be totally, truly yourself with and just put it out there and you're going to be listened to and receive compassion and not be judged, but also at the same point, it's somebody that's going to help you with a solution, right? Empathy is great, compassion's great, but ultimately, you, we want to get to working to solutions too, right? We don't, you, you got that friend that they call you every week and it's the same problem. And
Right.
I'll listen, but eventually, the rubber hits the road where we have to take action, you know, and that's,
Yes.
you you gotta get a little push there. So,
Yes. I was following, I can't remember who, a psychologist, on one of the social media platforms who was talking about, you can come in week after week for sessions, and I can sit here and I can say I understand, and we can explore those feelings, but therapy is useless if you're not taking steps forward to solve the problem. And I think that was sort of a polarizing statement that he made, but I think it's so it's very appropriate. We can talk and talk and talk, and that's important to explore, but we got to move forward. And so how do we do that? We talked about honesty, which I think is the H in the acronym of how to change, right? Mentioned in the intro that how to change is H.O.W. So let's talk a little bit about the O. What does that stand for, and what does that mean?
yeah, O is open-mindedness, and, we live in, we have a really, smart, intelligent, rational, technological, like, very advanced society, right, in all of human history. And we have a lot of knowledge and with the internet and, we have a lot of information. You talked about podcasts. I like podcasts. I mean, effectively, if you have a smartphone and an internet connection, you can find all the information you need. Um, if you're willing to put in the effort, you can find experts of varying levels of expertise in that sense. But especially when you get into medicine or nutrition or science, or really actually a lot of things in life, um, nobody's selling a guarantee, right? I've never gone to the doctor and they've guaranteed their treatment would work, right? And Verta, we have our trials, we have really good evidence, we have a lot of experience, but I can't guarantee to someone on day one how it's going to go, right? If you got to do your part, I got to do my part. We got to do all these things, right? And if we do all these things fairly effectively, we're probably going to get a pretty good result. Um, and you can look at statistics and group averages and those things. There has to be a level of open mindedness because I could design the perfect plan for myself, but I'm also humble. Well, when you say you're the most humble, maybe you're not. But I also recognize that, to deflate my ego a little bit, I can design the perfect, say, nutrition plan for myself. But I also recognize that there's no way I'm going to follow it perfectly for 365 days. And maybe I can pull it off for a week or two. Right. And, so there's conditions I don't control. There's other people, places, and things. There's my own behavior. There's getting sick. Right. There's all these kind of things. And so you want to have a good general starting spot, but be open minded and not so attached to a specific outcome to have more flexibility to be able to change, right, and to reassess and then gain new information, and then maybe we need to pivot. And so it's being engaged in a process. It's not like, hey, if I do X, I'm guaranteed to get Y, right? And so I think
Yeah.
open mindedness, another, curiosity kind of plays into that. I wonder how this is going to go, right? Not, hey, if I guaranteed you're going to get this result and you don't get it, well, we were going to be upset, right? Um, and sometimes I can come across as not being confident in it, but my confidence is that if you stick in the process with me and stay open-minded and curious and try things and experiment, we will, be able to adjust and reassess and make changes on the fly, which is really just life. It'd be kind of boring if I got up every day and knew
Yeah.
exactly what was going to happen, even if it was good, right?
Yeah.
It'd get kind of boring.
Exactly.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
and that's where so many people fall short when it comes to change, wouldn't you agree? They have this idea, "Here's my plan. I'm going to execute on this plan, and this will be the outcome." And when it's not the outcome, or it's not the outcome that you were hoping for in the timeline you were hoping for, it's, "Well, I guess this doesn't work. This isn't for me." And that can be such a barrier to we're setting
Mm.
ourselves up for failure by having that expectation.
Yeah, I mean, the expectations and also emotional dependencies on outcomes, right? And those are kind of the 2 big killers of everything. You're not gonna sign up and do anything the perfect would be, hey, no expectations. I don't know how to live that way. I tried to minimize and reduce my expectations. I tried to focus more on what I control, which is my attitudes, actions, and reactions, right? I try to put the odds in my favor by having a plan and strategy. And I could do all those things, and then, we could have a tornado, right? Or
Uh-huh.
hurricanes. My brother lives in Florida, right? There's all kinds of things out there that we all know and recognize that happen in life that we do not control. Yet what we do is try to, put this rigid, perfective system on our life that is not perfect, and then, hope that it goes, perfectly, which it's not going to. And the second, we hit choppy waters, it's like, well, it was this program, right? And it could be, when I wrote the article, it's like, there are plans that don't work, right? You know, so you have to discern a little bit and try some things. And there is a time where you're like, this plan is not going to work for me for whatever reason after adjusting and being curious and experimenting, in that sense. But yeah, I think that just that perfectionism, and then we put it on ourselves, right? Which is really kind of a defense mechanism for shame, and fear, right? If I have to do this perfect, and if I don't, then I'm bad. Or, there's just all kinds of layers, underneath that perfectionism that trip us up. And that's a lot of Brene Brown's work, really. It's just that focus on shame. Yeah.
Yeah. I also love something else that she says, which is to take the word should out of your vocabulary. Um, Stop shoulding all over yourself is one thing that she says that I think is just so perfect. When we say, I should be able to do this, I should have this outcome, I should have lost this amount of weight, I should be able to get my ketones higher. That again, it just sets us up for that failure really, and that rigidity that we're not able to maintain that curiosity like you so eloquently talked about, and the ability to keep iterating and seeing, hey, what is going to work for me? Because no doubt, even if a plan laid out perfectly in that exact sense doesn't work, sure enough there's got to be something within that plan that you're going to find some sort of positive movement with. So I do love that rule, and I try to adopt that rule as much as I can.
Yeah, I wrote a blog, is probably 15 years ago. It's called The Black Magic of Should, right? And
Oh.
I've been trying to pull that out of, or when I do it to somebody else, you should have, right? What is that? That's kind of a finger pointy way. I don't like when people say I should have. Uh, but it's also expecting that, we have perfect information and we're omniscient and we could prepare and plan for every single thing that could have ever happened. And it comes down to, no matter what, this kind of goes back into acceptance and honesty, is like, no matter what happened, that was the best I could do. That is the truth of that. Now, it might not have hit the mark. It might not have gotten the outcome, right? There's objective assessments. But I think what we tend to do is look back in the past. We have this hindsight 2020 vision of, now we have information we didn't have in that moment, right? And so we like to go in the past and pretend like we knew what we didn't know, and like we could have made a different decision. And the reality is, well, you can't change the past, but we only knew what we knew, and we did the best we could in that moment. And I think what I find, I get a little pushback on that, because there's this, oh, you're letting yourself off the hook thing, which again is kind of more of a self criticism, judgment, shame thing. Why do I want to put myself on the hook? And I'll get feedback. I don't want to be too easy on myself. And I'm going, if your brain works like mine, you have never actually been too easy on yourself. If anything, especially in American our culture, it's a shame-based culture. We are so tough on ourselves, right? And, we would, I would, if someone talked to me the way I talk to myself at times, I would punch them, right? I get these things I can say to myself are very judgmental and criticism and condemning and all those kind of things. And, that's just kind of wired in there. They're just thoughts, but it takes a lot of active work, when you have those kind of judgmental thoughts and systems in there. And I think unrooting some of those, and that's where other people can be so helpful. Hey, I'm really beating myself up right now. They can, they don't have to tell us we're amazing and we're perfect, right? But they can say like, hey, you did the best you could. We care about you. You're trying hard. You're putting in a good effort. And that could be your coach, or your spouse, or your friend, or a coworker. I think in the context of Verta, it's good to connect with other people who are doing the same thing, right? There's a level of empathy and understanding that you can get. But at the end of the day, anybody that loves and cares about you is a good person to help kind of work on that level. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't say, "You shouldn't feel bad about yourself," because then again, not super helpful. But I'm gonna put you on the spot. Yeah, I'm not supposed to say should. I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Doug. So let's say, um, I had this grand plan to go into a Thanksgiving meal with my family. I had my plate planned out. I knew exactly what I was gonna do with all the desserts. I was gonna stay far away from them. Everything was mapped out, ready to go. I walked in confidently. And then I just took one look at a trigger food for me, which is my sister-in-law's fudge. And it was all over. It was all over. I said, I'm just gonna have one bite, had one bite, and then just the whole plan went out the window. The next day I wake up feeling pretty terrible from all that fudge and then a lot of other desserts that I ate because I decided to just, you know, throw in the towel. And I think to myself, gosh, I shouldn't have done that. I had a whole plan laid out. I should have just stuck to the plan. The plan was supposed to work. So, how might I change the conversation with myself? Or maybe how could I say something differently to take myself out of that kind of should shame spiral?
Yeah, the spiral is super difficult because that's the spiral in a sense, right? We're trying to do something, we don't do the thing, we do something else, and if we can intervene and not shame ourselves, right, you can break the cycle right there. Perfect would be, I didn't do the thing, right? I mean, that's where you really want to have the, change in the real world in a sense. The thoughts are same. But I think what we can start doing is just one awareness of that cycle. I don't know that a lot I certainly wasn't even aware of this cycle. And then as I gained awareness, then I'd actually start judging myself or shaming myself, which is still kind of just a second layer back, second order effect. And it's starting to work it forward. And so you know, we could say, what could we have done different, right? In the sense of planning for the future, because Thanksgiving is going to come again. I think in the short term, it's really just you have to tell someone, right? Like you just got to get it out. I've never been able to figure out, the shame spiral in my head because it's my head doing the spot, right? It's just you can't outthink your thinking. Y- there's to me, it's always just it's that vulnerability and courage, and just telling someone else, whether they're the most supportive or not, or they give you any idea. And then I'm just a big fan of water under the bridge. I think self-compassion practices and forgiveness practices and all those types of things. There's different prayers and different meditations and loving kindness, and there's a lot of things that you can do in that. But it's if we can intervene to not shame, and then it's immediately do something positive. And it doesn't even need to be
Okay.
food, right? It's immediately do something positive and let yourself have the win and feel good about it. Because here's what I see too is, uh, oh, I blew it up, and that was my first Christmas. I'd been eating low carb for 2 months, and I almost ate like a whole pecan pie, right? I made it through dinner actually even, and it was just like this craziest phenomenon. I felt horrible physically and mentally and emotionally, and I was kinda in this pit. Go do something positive, right? You can't make up for it in a sense. We're not going to punish ourselves. There's a lot of dieting punishment, right? Oh, I binge ate and I'm going to starve for 2 days. Or I'm going to over exercise, right? Punishing yourself for a mistake is not going to be helpful. Do something positive, and it's just start over, right? You get a lot of, oh, I ruined it all. It's all lost. It's like you didn't lose anything. Now if we string that out until January 2nd, now there's gonna be a physical affect in a sense, but, if anything, you gain more experience. It can sound kinda cliche in a sense, you gained experience, you gained learning, you tried something, it didn't work. Um, it's not don't care in a sense, but a little bit of it is in the short term is like, don't care, get on with it, water under the bridge, do something positive and accept the win. 'Cause that's what we'll do too, like, we'll take a little baby step and the voice in there goes, "Well, that's not good enough." Right? Yeah. Well, you had to start somewhere, right? Just the fact that we did anything positive coming out of a negative experience. I think one of the articles I wrote, Phil Jackson, the coach of the Bulls, had this saying, He goes, "You're only a success in the moment you complete a successful act." Right, and you flip that on the other side, you're only a quote failure, and that's a harsh word, but you could really only say you're a failure in the moment you did a unsuccessful act, and really, I guess the better word would be you were unsuccessful, right? So you're not a permanent winner, you're never a permanent winner. Sports, that's obvious. You're never a permanent loser, you're never a permanent failure. But that shame message in there is kind of makes that our identity. I am a loser. I'm a failure. I can never stick with it. And it's that barrage of I statements. I mean, what I've learned, if I want to live a miserable life, I just need to think about myself all day, right? Like that is the if I want to live a miserable life, I need to obsessively think about myself all day. Because usually it's not going to be anything good. And if it is, it's kind of grandiose narcissism of how amazing I am, right? And so, that would be another thing like we would say in 12 step in recovery is, well, if you're really eating it in life, go help someone else. Boy, nothing gets me
I
out
like
of
that.
myself more than going to go help someone else with their problem, right? That pays me back so much. And what am I not doing while I'm helping them? I'm not thinking about my problem or how bad I am or how bad my life is. That builds a community too, right? You're getting out there and you're helping other people, and then you build relationships and community and support. And as part of the article, it's like someone somewhere has it way worse than I do today. And that's true for every single one of us living in America, no matter how bad it is. There's somebody in the world, but don't use that to beat yourself up, right? Because we'll do that too. I shouldn't, feel bad because somebody else has. So that's just should again, right? It's just those things, and I think it's just get into action, right? Thinking is not action, right? Like I can't solve a thinking problem with thinking. I have to get into action. I have to be of service. I have to do something positive. I have to take a step forward. You just have to keep going, doing something. That's kind of a long rambling answer to that one, but does that
It's all
does that
good.
help?
I think what I yeah, I think what I heard, what I really took away from that was, "Hey, let's simplify this. It didn't go to plan. It happened. I'm gonna go do something that helps me feel good and helps someone else feel good." And it could be as simple as that, right? Let's just follow that formula. And chances are high when you do something that helps someone else feel good, you help someone else with a problem, you help them feel better, it fills your own bucket as well. It fills you up too. And when we are full of positive energy, we're more likely to make better choices too. So we don't have to overcomplicate it. It kind of is a complicated subject when we're talking about how we're accepting ourselves, since that's a lifelong process. But I love these little practical pieces and tips that you can provide for us to get there and make that part of the process. So we've talked about two key parts of this acronym: the H in how, which stands for honesty. We talked about being brutally honest with yourself. The O, which stands for open-mindedness. We talked about accepting failures and accepting slip ups and really just kind of moving on and trying new things until we figure out something that really works for us. Let's talk about the W. What does that stand for, and what does that kinda mean for you?
And W is willingness. I mean, we live in America. So we're free. I always make a joke, we're not in North Korea, a gun to our head making us do things, right? And so there is a balance of with having all this freedom, we can kind of do whatever we want for the most part, right? We have responsibilities and you got bills and you got all those kind of things, but it's actually quite easy to not do things that are healthy for ourselves and maintain, a good enough living standard and be okay. So nobody's coming to save us, right? Nobody's going to do it for me, right? People can help. There's people on the path. But at the end of the day, I have to be willing to take some action, right? And sum it up. My son's 14. We had this conversation at the beginning of the school year. Dad, how do you make yourself get up? I'm like, well, you can have strategies, right? We can set an alarm clock. You can set a backup alarm clock. We can get a plug-in alarm. You got your phone alarm. I prefer it not be me coming in there, but if I need to, right, I'm a system, but at the end of the day, when your alarm goes off, you just have to get up. Like eventually you just get down to the level of all things where you just have to do it. And, that is self-will, right? If I move my arm, I can't tell you how my brain did that, but, we have will, we have agency, we're not helpless, we're not victims, right? There are things we do, you know, we get up every day, we have enough will to eat, we have enough will to walk, we have enough will to breathe, right? So there's a willingness, but I think you go back to acceptance, there's also, if we're gonna be honest and accepting, you know, to me, I'd rather hear, "I am not willing to do that." I w That's honest, and that's accepting exactly where you're at. Now, depending on what it is, you can kinda dig around in there and explore that with somebody. I would rather hear that than being told what people think I want to hear, and then no one doing it, right? And you got your kids are younger, but I got kids, and I've coached kids in sports, and I've worked here, and I know other humans. We "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna do that," and then you don't really wanna do it, right? You know, I'd rather just deal with the truth, there's 100 things we can do for, nutrition or hydration or fitness, right? You don't have to do all 100. What are you willing to do, right? Because if we're willing to do it or we have some positive emotional valence or we think we can do it or we have some hope that we can do it, it's gonna be a little bit easier to do those than to go pick the hardest thing that we're not willing to do. Why am I usually not willing to do things? Because 'Cause I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid I mean, there's some things I just don't like to do, but if I'm trying to make a change and I'm unwilling, it's a fear block, right? Most of my fears, I've kinda summed it down to, there's the fear of physical death, luckily I don't face that one every day, but it's fear of future shame, right? I'm gonna extend myself and put myself out to do something, and I might fail, and when I fail, I might feel shame, right? So it's like, to me, it's shame on the front end, and then it's fear of shame, and so that's why you don't take the hardest thing, right? Like, you don't go run 100-mile race with no training. Why don't we try, running a mile, right? And building up and, maybe you decide you don't wanna do that 100-mile race, which is probably a smart idea not to do that. But I think it's, just finding what we're willing to do and then doing that, and, if you look at, like, a restart out of a Thanksgiving, right? What are you willing to do? And you're willing to take a 5-minute walk, and you're willing to eat a low-carb breakfast. Great, let's do that. And take the win. Feel good about it, right? And as we start making positive, progress and we're chalking up some wins, the momentum builds. Hey, now I'm ready to tackle lunch. Now I'm ready to do a 15-minute walk. Now I'm willing to do this, do that, right? It's a flywheel effect. You just
Yeah,
go to
will
physics, right?
builds it builds
Yeah,
upon will, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
stuff happens. Like life's gonna hit you in the face. At times it kind of slows you down. And that's fine. But that's where I find like when things are going generally well, right? That's you don't want to coast. You don't coast uphill. Right? You don't have to have the foot on the gas when life's good, but you have to continually making some progress in some area of your life. I think that's just a human thing. We don't like being static. We don't stay the same. There's this illusion, "Oh, I'm going to stay the same." I'm like, every day I get older. I'm not aging in reverse, like this thing takes some
If only.
maintenance and yeah, I mean, maybe science will figure that out one day. But I think there's a how to get excited about some of these things, right? Yeah, and it does take work and effort. But if you put enough effort in, build a solid foundation, you look forward to it. It's weird. Like I look forward to eating healthy. I look forward to working out, not magically every day. I look forward to doing the things that are positive to my health. And that, trust me, that wasn't me. 25 years ago, I walked in my first AA meeting a wreck. I wasn't like excited about doing anything, much less sitting in that room, you know. And I think that hopefully that's some of what I help people do or bring with coaching is just this, you might not be able to do it all. You might not check every box, but you can do something, and you're worth it, right? You're a worthy human being. You deserve this. You deserve help, right? You deserve love. You deserve compassion. All these things, and do what you can do, right? Don't compare yourself, right? Don't judge, and we all do that too, right? That person might have that easier, and they might have it harder, right? But what can I do today, to better myself, and live a more healthy life. And for me, then it's a lot of this is just that foundation of, when I feel better, I show up better and I serve better and I love people better and I parent better and I'm a better employee and I'm a better friend. And, it's you like Dave Matthews. It's a
Sure.
ish. Yeah, one of the
Yeah.
Dave Matthews song, "When you give, you begin to live." I mean, what a great lyric,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When you give, and when my health was not good, and I'm in treatment centers, I'm not able to give, right? And that's so I got to clean my stuff up and get back out there, to be a loving person, and contribute to society and help people and try to make this a better world. So
And
but
like you
it's
said, it's
just
that flywheel, the flywheel effect. You
yeah.
start what I'm hearing you 25 years ago, you start by being willing to go to a meeting. And maybe that doesn't feel that big in the grand scheme of things, but it is. It's huge. It's you're willing to step into that room. You may not have wanted to do it. You can. You may not want to. You may want to improve your health. You may want to get better. You may want to stop a damaging habit. But it's not until you're willing to actually step into that room that change actually happens, right? That's what I'm hearing from you. And then what you're willing to do grows over time as you keep kind of conquering one willingness after the next. So I really just love this kind of breakdown of how you can change. So again, it's honesty, not kind of honesty, but brutal honesty with yourself. Um, it is open-mindedness, and curiosity, and it is you've got to be willing to do it. This is a great great 1, 2, 3 strategy for accepting ourselves and getting on that path to making some really positive and lasting changes. So I'm really grateful that you were here with us today, Doug, and I want to kind of close things up by asking if there was one place that you would recommend somebody start who really wants to make a change, let's say a change to their diet. They know they can, they're not quite sure what they're willing to do. How might they think about that? Where might they start that conversation?
I think, if you're working with a coach here, you're getting some ideas both from the app and, the coach and the material that's presented, right? It's not like, hey, there's only one thing to do here. Right? There's flexibility. There's a lot of different places. Usually when I have people, it's like, there's an exploratory process, right? You want to start with breakfast, you want to start with lunch. There's nothing too small, right? Like you said, me walking into that room 25 years ago, I didn't want to do it. I mean, I kind of, there was the Quakers call it the still small voice within, right? There's this conscious or God thing. It's like, hey, you should probably go to that thing. And there's some pressure from the outside. Um, but that one thing I did that one day changed the entire trajectory of my life. And if you had told me that 25 years ago, I would have been like, that makes 0 sense to me, right? So you never know that one change you make could be the one change that changes the trajectory of your whole life, right? So don't minimize any change that you make, because honestly, all change is hard. I mean, I would much rather like not have to do any of like, I mean, come on, like, sitting on my couch watching Netflix, eating pizza sounds amazing. I mean, like, if I could just do that willy-nilly with no consequences, right, and somebody would pay my bills and my metabolic health would stay, sign me up, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not like some, like, nutrition purist here. I mean, but the reality is that does not work, right? And so there's acceptance. And so I would say it's anything that you're considering, that sounds remotely doable or has any emotion, or you just think you can do it, or just do that. Everybody can do something. I've worked with guys in prison, halfway houses, Skid Row, bankrupt, unemployed, homeless, and I've just seen them turn their lives around and have storybook lives, right? And from the depths of addiction and all kinds of legal challenges and things like that. And you have to start somewhere, right? You can't start at the end. I mean, there's just it's all these cliche things, but it's literally whatever you are willing to do today counts. And you have to tell yourself it counts. And if you don't think it counts, get somebody to tell you that it counts until you believe that it counts. Because everything we do positive counts because it's so easy to do nothing, right?
Yeah.
And what you want to do is voluntarily choose to take this on. Because if we don't voluntarily take it on, eventually it takes us on, right? And
Wow.
that's a
Yeah.
much harder spot to be in, and that voluntarily taking something on, it's just such a powerful, empowering thing, no matter what it is, that if you just do that and continue to do something every day, eh, if somebody just opened the Verta app every day for 365 days, I guarantee their life is going to change.
I
Just something,
fully agree. Yeah.
just that.
Yeah.
If you
It's
can
that
commit to
example
just
of
doing that, yeah,
mhm. It's that example
yeah,
of nothing is too small. No positive change is too small. And I love that. I think we'll end our time together on that. So if you are trying to figure out how to change, um, think about there's not one positive change that's too small, and celebrate that because it's going to turn into other positive changes. So, um, Doug, it was so awesome to have you on the show. I really enjoyed chit-chatting back and forth with you, getting to pick your brain. You're obviously an amazing source for our members here at Verta and for your fellow coaches too. So I'm really excited to have you back on a future episode. And I hope you have a happy holiday season, happy new year. Thanks again so much.
awesome. Yeah, thanks, Teresa. This is great. Appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. And if you'd like to regain control of your metabolic health and feel like yourself again, check us out at Virta.com. That's VIRTA.com. Your Life Reset is for informational purposes only and shouldn't be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Contact your provider if you suspect you have a medical problem. I'll chat with you all again soon. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.